The Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series is brought to you by Holy Wallet, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform. Stay tuned to find out how Holy Wallet can help you build your mobile wallet to increase revenue and reduce time to market.
Be mindful of, what is going on and how's that going to impact what people do and how they do things. I think what you see with the old traditional banks is they've hard-coded the way they work into their systems. For a lot of them, they have to go, well, actually, now's the time to really think about blowing some of these up and starting again. Until they do that, they are sort of stuck with what they've got. I think it's then being brave about some of the choices you make in things like your technology. Over the next 10 years, the notion of even phoning someone up to kind of get support will kind of disappear. If the mobile is the only channel your customers go to, you've got to make the most of that.
Welcome to the Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series. In this series, we are deep diving into some of the hottest and most pivotal topics in the financial services industry right now, including personalization in financial services, embedded finance, and the mobile payment revolution. Join us as we seek the answers to critical questions such as what does the future hold for the financial services sector and where should we look for the next big disruptive idea. Welcome back to another episode of the Change Officer special series Future of Financial Services. Today with me, Dave. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's quite a pleasure having someone from the other market in the studio, bringing in some of the insights for us who've been operating in one of the most emerging markets, I guess, in the recent history. Maybe.
So I'm from the UK, and I guess I've spent the last 25 years helping financial services companies to find their way online, and I've been throughout that time quite UK focused, but I've also been lucky enough to work in places like Hong Kong and Australia and Singapore, and I've sort of seen how things have kind of changed at different kind of speeds around the world, So,
which is a vital insight for anyone really dealing in this industry, which is, as we said in almost every episode so far, transforming at a rapid pace, while probably in most rapid out of all industries, while we are all feeling that there is still so many things to be done, and we are sort of at the beginning. There are so many topics about cash and how we need to go digital, and then unbanked and underbanked, which is a completely different topic that we don't have to unpack this time, and there are two sides of the story.
Yes.
But I think what would be really interesting to deep dive and understand and hear from you, obviously on the whole state, of the industry, if we are talking about banks, but not only banks, about other players in the financial services sector, going digital. Although maybe on the surface, going digital sounds simple, whoever is in the industry understands how difficult that process seems to be. Whether it should be difficult or not, that's now a big question. But I would really like to hear from you, what you've witnessed, success stories, use or good cases and examples of how to go digital. And for organizations in the emerging markets who are looking at so many different opportunities, what are the essential focus points in this whole process?
Right, I think so. I mean, I've been lucky enough, as I say, to kind of see the industry emerge, and I think for the first, I would say 20 years, so much of what was done was about actually how do we kind of digitize existing processes within our own organizations and actually get those online. So, the sort of early instances of digital banking and online insurance basically took existing processes and put those online in a kind of very traditional sense. So, and I think often what was happening was banks saw an opportunity, or the finance companies saw an opportunity to reduce costs by getting customers to do the work that their staff had done previously. And I think, what's kind of happened latterly is with the kind of birth of fintech and the explosion of fintech has been actually a sort of change in the way things are done. So, in days gone by, well, I mean, even today for some banks, if you want to open an account, you have to go into a branch, fill in some paper and show a wet signature as well as your ID. Whereas, what neobanks and some of the fintech banks have been able to do is to say, well, actually, you don't need to do that. A phone number, a copy of your passport and a selfie is all you need in terms of identification. So things like onboarding, instead of taking sort of weeks, now takes 5 minutes. And I think, that means that the kind of cost of entry for new players has come down drastically. And it just means people can kind of get into accounts a lot faster. So I think that's just an example of something where, it's kind of been solved by the industry. And I think, I guess what places like Dubai and India, where a lot of work is going on in the infrastructure, the underpinning infrastructure for citizens, is going to make that even easier. So, using things like IDs and phone numbers, citizens will be able to get access to financial products a lot faster than they can today.
Yeah. So we are going to wrap up the episode with sort of, what are the main or the changes or the change ahead that you see happening that is unlocking these massive new opportunities. But if we look at today, what are the essential changes that you need to make in order to even do basic digitalization? These days, mobile banking seems like it's just rolled out recently, and we're talking about, we need to, get the whole process fully online. We're just getting the basically use cases covered currently digitally, and that took them a while. What are the essential changes that need to happen in organizations in financial services to actually embrace this new digital reality?
So, my background is user experience. So I think one of the kind of core principles that companies need to adopt is understanding how to do that from a kind of customer point of view and what customer expectations are. So I think if you start with a picture of, what are customers likely to want from the kind of digital experience, then you can kind of start building a picture in terms of what you need from a technology point of view. So what we're starting to see is as banks then look at actually what does that mean, and finance companies look at what does that mean, they're having to think about actually does our core system, is that actually capable of doing the things that we need to do? So actually some banks are starting to change their core systems because they realize that, what customers are looking for is a lot more kind of speed in terms of product and service delivery, and their current platforms are just not up to mustard in terms of being able to do that. So, I think if you look at kind of the core platform, then you need to kind of think about, should we kind of build out a cloud-based architecture? So cloud offers so many kind of opportunities to do things at scale, which I think were not previously available before. Then, do you actually need to do everything yourself? So, increasingly what we're seeing is banks thinking and finance companies thinking about, actually, could we leverage off an interesting piece of technology which is doing something that we don't currently do? So instead of us building it ourselves, can we actually kind of start bringing in best-of-breed products to fulfill something in particular? So onboarding is a good example where, a lot of banks and finance companies will work with a third party to do that KYC piece now, because the companies that do that have kind of perfected it. So, banking is becoming a lot more composable in the way it's done. So I think, to kind of do this correctly, you need to have a very clear view of the bits that you kind of need in terms of what's going to deliver that experience.
No, absolutely. Especially in the case now of digital banks, neobanks. There are a lot of currently companies, startups, calling themselves neobanks. Well, to be called a neobank, you actually need to be a bank.
Yes, right? Of course. So you need a license.
So you need a license. You need a lot of things in place. And there are data that are showing that very small percentage of neobanks manage to turn profitable or successful, etc., because where banks are making most of their margins and profits are not in the core services that you're providing essentially when you roll out the bank. There are cases around the world that are successful. There are cases in emerging markets that are being rolled out. Have you witnessed those success stories, and what do you think about digital banks and digital only banks comparing to the...
So I think we're very lucky in the UK because we've got a number of players who I think are proving that the model can be very successful. So, example is Monzo, which launched as a millennial bank. I think it's almost probably 10 years ago. Digital, mobile only, slick onboarding. They really thought through that kind of experience. And, what they've done is they've managed to attract a particular demographic. So younger people tend to prefer banking with them. And actually, when you look at kind of things like usage stats on an ongoing basis, what you see is Monzo is one of the most heavily used banks, sort of in terms of percentage-wise, in the UK. So people are going to Monzo more regularly than they are a traditional bank. So they've really thought about kind of that total experience, and I think have really kind of capitalised on a particular audience.
So when you're looking at the traditional bank now that is being introduced to this new sort of competition, or do you think they are competitors or not?
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think one of the things which is a problem for Monzo is they are not the bank that people are paying their salary into.
I see.
So what you see is that people keep their existing bank relationships, but what they don't use is their existing bank relationships for day-to-day spending. They move money into Monzo, and that's what they're using for their day-to-day spending. So that means that Monzo lacks the kind of deposits that it needs in order to kind of become a bigger lender. So that's a kind of problem for it, and that's something that it kind of needs to solve.
But still, it's sort of eating away a part of the business for a traditional bank.
Definitely. What you're having is this instance where, in effect, it's creating zombie banks. So, the legacy banks are seeing one or two transactions on a month, which is when the salary comes in, and then the money goes into Monzo. People's banking relationship is then with Monzo on an ongoing basis.
So what's the answer for a traditional or bank in this case?
Well, it's a very good question. I think the answer is you improve your customer experience. You look at what the kind of neobanks are doing, and you begin to kind of copy that. And we're starting to see that happening more and more. Or in the case of, we've just had Chase launch a digital bank in the UK. So this is the first time that they've launched a consumer proposition in the UK. And that's just gone down extremely well. So it's like a really, it's a really nice digital proposition. Yeah. But, I look at it and I'm starting to think about moving my salary into it because it's backed by Chase, and Chase is part of the JP Morgan group, which is one of the largest banks in the world. And I think, for me, I feel like, okay, there's security there. So it's a great digital experience. It does everything you would kind of expect from a kind of neobank, but it's got that security.
Well, yeah, I guess this is where still, traditional bank has the upper hand comparing to the,
it's one of those things where our reptilian brain, for some reason, we like looking at bank buildings and going, well, I'm never going in there, but at least it's there if I kind of needed it. And I think that's enough to kind of get people to stay with those traditional players. So, I think it's an odd one, but, it's something that we can't get away with.
Hey everyone, sorry for jumping in. We'll be back with the rest of the conversation shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsor of our show, Holy Wally. Within the next 2 years, 4 billion people will be using digital wallets, and the global mobile payments market size is expected to hit US $5.5 billion by 2024. It's more important than ever for financial service providers to offer a digital wallet service to their customers. Enter Holly, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform that allows any financial service provider to build their own digital wallet as efficiently and cost-effectively as possible. Whether you're a fintech, retailer, banking institution, or insurance carrier, Holly has all the elements you need to build your own company's ideal digital wallet in a matter of minutes and manage it on an ongoing basis. To find out how Holly can increase your customer engagement and revenue, or to register for a demo, visit hollywally.com. The link can be found in the show notes of this episode, and now enjoy the rest of this conversation.
While I was preparing for our conversation, I read a couple of your articles, and I really like the angle how you're approaching them, and you've been doing that for a while, producing a lot of content. Talking about the future and where are we heading with the industry. You mentioned AI, you mentioned cash, several other mobile banking, etc. What are some of these trends that you are noticing, given that you're getting informed quite a lot and writing on it, that you are betting on or believing they're going to really shape next couple of years?
So I think, there's a few which I think are interesting. Personalization, I think, is a massive opportunity for the banking industry and the finance industry. So I think, to date, what most companies have done as they've gone through this digital revolution has thought about, putting existing products and services online. What they haven't done is taken that customer data and made anything useful with that customer data. And I think there's a big movement towards personalization and hyper-personalization, where banks are starting to use their digital real estate to actually talk to their customers about things that matter to them. So I think there's a communication piece which I think is really interesting. I think the future of money in my mind is very mobile. So I think actually investing in mobile platforms makes much more sense than in this sort of omni-channel sort of strategy that I think a lot of banks are pursuing at the moment, because I think mobile phones are in pretty much everybody's hands. And we're chatting about kind of money. Money is mobile now. So I've been to Dubai for I think 4 times over the last 6 months. I haven't taken money in or taken money out in the country. I use my mobile phone for pretty much everything that I do, so I think mobile is becoming more and more of an important thing.
And do you think that cash will be dead soon?
Yeah, I think cash is disappearing, even in economies where cash is is very strong. As soon as things like Apple Pay move into the market and tap on cards move into the market, then what you see is sort of money starting to disappear. And actually, money then becomes something which, you begin to wonder why you've got money in the first place, So, I was lucky enough before the pandemic to go to Shenzhen in China. And what you realize is, in China, they've kind of moved beyond money and they've moved beyond credit cards. So everything is on your mobile phone. And if you don't have a mobile phone with Alipay or WeChat on, then you can't buy things. It's almost impossible to
operate. How do you operate as a tourist?
It's very difficult. It's actually very difficult. You have to have someone with you with access to these things. So literally in a hotel, I was like, trying to find a credit card that they would accept, because they had such a limited range of kind of cards that they would accept. Restaurants, show them a card and they don't even have the kind of wherewithal to pay for it. So I think cash will rapidly actually start kind of just disappearing over the next few years. A market like Dubai, you can, as I say, you can kind of see it happening already.
Yeah, but I guess this doesn't cover underdeveloped or undeveloped markets, where to even reach the mobile banking you need to have the bank account, and to get the bank account you actually need to be, you need to have the access to it.
That's right. I think though there's a lot of these countries are actually investing quite heavily in digital infrastructure and focusing on things like mobile technology to kind of answer that question. So, you are seeing big changes And there's a lot of innovation. So there's a company called Nala who I was chatting to at the start of the year, and what they do is you can send money effectively using a mobile phone number to any mobile phone number in East Africa.
It's like peer-to-peer payments?
It's peer-to-peer payments, yeah. And what they had identified was money remittances was a huge, and fees around money remittances was a huge problem. So they've used technology to kind of solve that problem. And I think this is quite an interesting trend when you look at kind of emerging markets and companies behind the trend, where actually a lot of companies are starting to look at real pain points and say, well, how do we use technologies to solve that? So I mean, one of the things that I think which will happen over the next 10 years is the West will really start dropping behind some of the innovation that's happening in places like Dubai and India and Nigeria, where real problems have been solved and then scaled up in incredible terms.
That's actually very interesting. I've been in this market since 2014, and there was always this notion, like looking at the US as the market which is leading the way, or always looking up the companies over there or organizations who are spearheading the innovation. But lately I feel like it's that it's slowing down, and in some areas even falling behind, and that you can actually see bigger innovation or this momentum happening in the markets that are facing rapid growth and that are being challenged by the fast growth.
So I think if you I come to Dubai and you can feel the energy here, and you can feel that there are a lot of people who are very interested in making big changes. I think the energy is sort of in places like the UK and the US is sort of starting to wane a bit. I think the problems that they have are sort of structural in terms of the way the banking systems are set up, the way, I guess in the UK we don't have a kind of national identity. So the ability for kind of change in financial services based on an ID like that is kind of difficult to come by. Whereas I think, in Dubai or places like India, you're able to, at a kind of country level, change the infrastructure. And it's that sort of stuff which I think really kind of propels the country forward, or the geography forward, because it's sort of a very solid foundation to kind of build on. So, again, if you look at India, with all the things that they've done in terms of the ID infrastructure that they've got, coupled with then highly skilled workforce, lots of innovation, you really start saying, well, actually, kind of in the future, true innovation is probably going to come out of places like India.
No, absolutely.
And I think, and places like Dubai. Every time I come here, there's another kind of conference on about something at the cutting edge, and I think there's a real interest in that.
Yeah, I think it is it kind of represents a group of different regions around the world where things are happening at a sort of faster and faster pace. Looking at what's ahead and the potential and where the future opportunities are lying, and the opportunities that organizations, banks have at the moment. You've witnessing what's been going on for the previous 25 years in this industry. What's the playbook on executing on this change for them? Where to put focus on, how to drive that change, how to execute on it?
I think it's just be mindful of, the environment, what is going on and how's that going to impact what people do and how they do things. I think you've got to be very mindful of that. I think it's then being brave about some of the choices you make in things like your technology. So, what you see with the old traditional banks is they've hard-coded the way they work into their systems. So, I think for a lot of them, they have to go, well, actually, now's the time to really think about blowing some of these up and starting again, to be honest with you. And until they do that, they are sort of stuck with what they've got.
Yeah.
So I think it's being really brave about some of those decisions. I think really understanding your users and what your users' expectations are and how to kind of make money out of those users, I think is really important as well. So, I think over the next 10 years, the notion of even phoning someone up to kind of get support will kind of disappear. So, if the mobile is the only channel your customers go to, you've got to make the most of that. I think things like AI are sort of starting, that's a very interesting trend for many reasons. I think AI can start helping in terms of how you build things, how you offer things.
Where do you see the biggest application or the biggest quick benefit of AI short term?
Well, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, well, it's very good at improving your processes. Now I've been looking at this thing called generative AI, which I think is super interesting, which is the ability to kind of create things based on text prompts. I think it's a great short circuit at this moment in time for making your marketing collateral much better in a kind of faster, easier, sort of more straightforward way. So I would be thinking about, how do I use AI to improve things like my search engine optimization? How do I get it to improve the content that I've got? How could I get, I think things like, here's sort of one of the ironies is we live in a world where, I don't know what it's like in the UAE, but in the UK, if you're a TikTok customer, which most people are, you will spend 95 minutes on TikTok every day. So people are looking at video content all the time. And then, they're going to their financial institutions experience, and there's perhaps one video of the CEO sort of giving the annual kind of.
So yeah, this is this complete difference between what you consume on every day, what you're used to, and then how you.
Exactly. So, I think thinking about how AI can help you improve your content and get more content, like video-based content, I think is a really interesting area.
Combined with personalized service.
Exactly. It's
where the opportunity lies.
I really think it is. Again, TikTok kind of shows you the way that, what it's doing. It's basically doing the job of a very smart content management system, which is based on your behavior, what it knows about you. It's serving up content.
Sometimes it is scary.
Yeah. It's really scary, and I think more like TikTok is sort of my advice. Like, how do I get stuff in front of my customers,
they're willing to consume?
Exactly. Which is it has to be relevant, but that's the irony, I think, of all of the sort of, like, banks are often worried about sort of selling products and services to their customers, but customers want products and services because they know that the banks are well placed to tell them about products and services which will help them manage their money better, or
basically people want to be sold.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Dave, thanks a lot for taking the time to join me here.
My pleasure. It's been a fantastic chat, and it's a great studio as well.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon again. And guys, thanks for staying until the end. Stay tuned. There is another great episode coming out soon. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.